There is something deeply revealing about the moment a woman begins to discover her inner strength. It is not a loud event, nor a grand gesture. Rather, it is a silent revolution, a transformation that occurs in the intimacy of the soul like a sprout emerging in the darkness of the earth before it touches the light. This transformation often begins unexpectedly, a heartbreak that shatters illusions, a betrayal that pierces deeper than words, or simply the exhaustion of carrying a life that no longer feels like her own. In that instant, almost imperceptible to others, she whispers to herself, "Enough. Enough of pretending, enough of silencing her truth, enough of betraying herself just to keep the peace." And that whisper, though fragile, becomes the spark of something unstoppable. It is not yet a flame, but it is the beginning of her return to herself. That return is not linear, nor is it gentle. It is raw, it is messy, it is painful. For when a woman comes back to herself, she does not only embrace the beauty she had forgotten, she also collides with the darkness she has hidden. She meets her anger, long repressed. She feels her desires, long silenced. She confronts the body she had once treated as foreign, the boundaries she allowed others to erase, the shame she carried without ever knowing why. This mirror is uncomfortable, but it is also sacred, because to truly awaken is not to become someone new, it is to remember the woman she always was before she was taught to forget. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward wholeness. For many women, that path begins with healing a wound they didn't even know they carried, the wound of being raised in a world that shames desire, fragments the body, silences the voice, and distorts love into sacrifice. This wound is not only personal, it is ancestral. It lives in memory, in the body, in the invisible threads of lineage, and when she finally touches it, she can no longer live the same way. She realizes her body is not an enemy but a temple. Her desire is not shameful but sacred. Her voice is not too loud, it is the song of her existence. Yet, here is the paradox. When a woman reclaims herself, the world around her trembles. Relationships that once felt safe begin to resist. Family, friends, even lovers may push back against this version of her who no longer asks permission to feel. They call her selfish, when in truth she has simply become conscious. They accuse her of changing, when in fact she has only remembered who she is, and in this remembrance she discovers the cruel truth she cannot heal in the same environment that once made her sick. She cannot bloom in a space that demands her to wither in order to please others. With this awakening often comes loneliness. Not the loneliness of being unloved, but the loneliness of standing naked before her own soul. In that vulnerability, everything is seen with painful clarity. What once was tolerable now feels unbearable. What once was ignored now demands attention. Yet, in this fertile solitude, a new seed sprouts, the seed of identity that no longer bends to expectations, no longer begs for validation, no longer defines itself by how much she is needed. It is the identity of a woman who is whole, not perfect, but whole. She may not have every answer, but she has her voice. She may still tremble, but she trusts her truth. From the perspective of depth psychology, this transformation is an alchemy, the turning of pain into wisdom, fragmentation into unity, silence into song. It is not easy, but it is sacred, because it means shedding what was inherited, deprogramming what was taught, and choosing instead to build life from the soul outward. It is the renunciation of comfort in order to embrace truth. So, if you find yourself in a moment where everything seems to be collapsing, when the life you built feels like it no longer fits, maybe you are not lost, maybe you are awakening. Awakening is messy, it is confusing, but it is also the greatest act of love you can offer yourself. It is not about becoming someone else. It is about returning to yourself, to the woman you were before the world told you who to be. And here lies the most powerful truth. When a woman reconnects with herself, she does not just heal herself, she heals her lineage, she transforms her relationships, she alters the very fabric of her world. In this silent yet unstoppable act, a new life begins to take shape. One where love is not about sacrifice, but about connection. one where the body is no longer a battlefield, but a garden, one where the wound is no longer a prison, but a doorway, and on the other side of that doorway lies the life she always sensed, but never dared to claim as her own. But it is here, in this fragile yet powerful stage, that another revelation often appears. Subtle, almost hidden, yet deeply unsettling, the realization that someone else is watching her, drawn to her light but terrified by it. He is the man who is quietly falling in love, but who cannot bear to admit it. His presence is contradictory, his gestures intense yet fleeting, his words warm one day and cold the next. It feels like being embraced and abandoned at once, like standing in the warmth of the sun, only to be left in the sudden chill of shadow. And though his behavior confuses you, beneath it lies a truth few dare to recognize. He does not vanish because he stopped feeling. He vanishes because he feels too much. He does not vanish because he is indifferent. He vanishes because your presence awakens feelings so overwhelming that they threaten to break through the walls he has spent years constructing. His words may tell you he's not ready, his excuses may sound logical, but beneath them lies fear. Fear of being exposed, fear of being hurt again, fear of surrendering to something he cannot control. What you are witnessing is not a lack of care, but an internal war. From the outside, it might look like inconsistency, even manipulation. One moment he is intoxicated by your presence, showering you with gestures, words, and attentions that make you feel desired, seen, chosen. And then, as if overnight, he withdraws into silence. Messages go unanswered, calls are avoided, the warmth that once radiated now turns distant and cold. The contrast pierces you, leaving you questioning everything. What changed? Did I do something wrong? Was it all a lie? But here is the truth, it was never a lie. Those moments of tenderness were real. His affection was genuine. The contradiction is not in his love, it is in his fear. His mind, like a fortress under siege, reacts instinctively. It builds excuses. This is moving too fast. I can't handle this. I'll only end up hurting her. But those excuses are not the full story. They are defenses, shields he lifts because love demands vulnerability, and vulnerability terrifies him. What he feels for you pulls him closer, but his fear pushes him away. This is the paradox of a man on the verge of falling in love. He is torn between the longing to surrender and the terror that surrender will destroy him. Jung once observed that the unconscious always reveals itself, even when the conscious mind resists. And so, while his words may falter, his body betrays him. His gaze lingers longer than it should. His shoulders lean toward you as if pulled by gravity. His pupils dilate when your eyes meet. Even when his mouth denies, his body speaks a truth he cannot silence. Watch closely, the nervous hands fidgeting, the laugh that comes too quickly, the hesitation in his voice when you're near. These are not signs of disinterest, they are signs of emotional impact, because the body, unlike the mind, cannot lie. And so, you stand in the midst of contradiction. He wants you, but he fears you. He reaches for you, then retreats. He says he's not ready, yet he keeps coming back. And you, naturally, feel torn. You want clarity, honesty, a direct confession. But pressuring him for answers he does not yet have will not free him. It will bury him deeper in confusion. He is not withholding truth from you. He is still wrestling to uncover it within himself. This is where many women stumble, believing his contradictions mean he never cared, dismissing the intensity of his affection as a game. But what if it is not a game? What if it is the visible chaos of a man trying to hold emotions that terrify him? What if the very distance that hurts you is his desperate attempt to protect himself from what he feels for you? Because for him, love is not just intimacy, it is the removal of armor. And to remove armor is to reopen old wounds, to risk pain he has spent years avoiding. So what should you do? The answer is not to chase, nor to beg, nor to dissolve yourself in his storm. The answer is to remain anchored in your own center, to see his contradictions for what they are, evidence of fear, not lack of feeling, to witness his inner war without making it your duty to win it for him. He does not need you to save him. He needs you not to abandon yourself while standing beside him. But make no mistake, this does not mean waiting endlessly, trapped in uncertainty. There is a difference between observing the signs of hidden love and sacrificing your clarity for his confusion. The truth is written in patterns, not in isolated moments. If despite his silences he always returns, if his gestures contradict his denials, if his presence seeks you again and again no matter how much he resists, then the love is there, even if he has not yet learned to name it. And love, when it hides, does not reveal itself through declarations. It leaks out in the smallest details, in the way he checks if you made it home safely, in the way he notices your mood shift, even when you say nothing, in the way he shows up with small gestures of care that he pretends mean nothing. These are not strategies to seduce you. They are not rehearsed tactics. They are unconscious expressions of something real, something raw, something he cannot entirely suppress. You will also notice how his world begins, almost imperceptibly, to include you, not with announcements or grand invitations, but with subtle integrations. He mentions you in conversations without realizing it. He shares a song that reminded him of you. He adjusts plans quietly just to spend more time with you. He asks your opinion on matters that are important to him, giving your voice weight in his decisions. These are not accidents. They are the unconscious movements of a man whose heart has already begun to shift, even while his mind resists. And yet, even in these moments of closeness, fear lingers like a shadow. Sometimes he will minimize his gestures, brushing them off as if they were nothing. Sometimes he will retreat just when the bond feels strongest. This is not because the bond is breaking, but because it has grown too deep, and in touching that depth, his old wounds flare. Love awakens not only joy but also the shadows he thought were buried, memories of rejection, fears of abandonment, beliefs that he is unworthy of being chosen. And so he retreats, not from you but from the terror of being seen too closely. Here lies one of the most painful paradoxes of unconscious love. Just when the connection feels most alive, he may run the farthest. And it is in that silence, in that sudden absence, that you may begin to question everything. But remember, this distance does not always mean disinterest. Sometimes it is the clearest sign of just how much you matter, because nothing unsettles the guarded heart more than love it cannot control. If you want to understand a man who is secretly falling in love, you must learn to see beyond his contradictions. His words may be tangled in fear, his silences may confuse you, but his actions, small, unguarded, almost invisible, become the language of his soul. Carl Jung often reminded us that the unconscious does not only speak through dreams, but also through gestures, posture, and the subtle theater of the body. And when a man loves but cannot yet say it, his body becomes the clearest messenger. Watch how he orients himself around you. Does he lean toward you even when he doesn't touch you? Does his gaze find you across a crowded room when he thinks you're not watching? Notice the way his laughter softens in your presence, or how his breathing shifts when your energy draws near. These are not rehearsed signals. They are not tactics designed to impress. They are cracks in the armor, unconscious betrayals of a truth he cannot yet control. The unconscious does not know how to lie. His body speaks even when his mouth remains silent. And then there is the nervousness, the restless hands, the sudden clumsy movements, the awkward jokes that spill out at the wrong time. To you it may seem like carelessness, but in reality it is the trembling of a man who feels more than he knows how to carry. His discomfort is not indifference, it is the intensity of impact. Because when the soul is touched, the body reacts honestly. Love unsettles him, shakes his composure, strips him of the certainty he hides behind. Notice, too, the silences, not the empty silences of disinterest, but the lingering ones when he stays close even without words, when he searches for you with his eyes even in a room full of voices, when his goodbyes stretch longer than necessary as if his body resists leaving. These are not accidents, they are confessions without language. They reveal a man whose heart has already leaned toward you, even if his mind still resists. And then, almost without realizing it, he begins to take care of you, not with grand declarations or dramatic sacrifices, but with small, unfiltered gestures that reveal more than he would ever admit. If you are out late, he checks if you got home safely. If you are unwell, he appears with something to ease your discomfort. If he senses your spirit heavy, he sends a message, a joke, a reminder that he is there. These are not strategies to win you, they are impulses he himself may not fully understand. They are the tender footprints of a love that has begun to grow roots in his soul. And perhaps even more telling, he starts to weave you into his world, not in a way that announces, but in a way that reveals. He mentions you to friends in passing. He shares a photo because something reminded him of your laughter. He adjusts his schedule quietly so he can see you. He asks for your thoughts on things that matter to him, granting your voice a place of influence in his decisions. These integrations are not casual. They are signs of a man whose heart has already chosen, even if his lips have not yet confessed. But here is the paradox: when you point out these gestures, he may minimize them. It's nothing, he'll say. He'll downplay the care, dismiss the tenderness, brush aside the meaning. Not because it is nothing, but because to name it would mean admitting a truth he is still terrified to face. Yet, you feel it. Because love, when it is real, does not always arrive with proclamations. Sometimes it slips into life quietly, revealed in the way someone shows up without asking for recognition, the way they care without expecting reward. Love, in its purest form, is not always spoken, it is done. And yet, this stage often brings confusion. For while his actions may whisper love, his words may still deny it. He may insist he's not ready, he can't give you more, he's not looking for commitment. But then he lingers, he stays, he continues to show up in ways that contradict his denials. And here, you are asked to see with more than logic. You are asked to read the soul beneath the surface. Because in love, actions are almost always more honest than words. From the lens of Jungian psychology, this contradiction reflects the split between the ego and the self. His ego, the part shaped by fear, duty, and cultural conditioning, still resists, but his self, the deep core of his being where true desires live, has already chosen. That is why his gestures betray him, why his care seeps through despite his denial. He may not consciously recognize it, but his soul has already moved toward you. Still, with this awakening comes another inevitable shadow. For just when the connection deepens, just when you feel the warmth of his care and the sweetness of his presence, something within him recoils. He pulls away. The texts slow down. The calls stop. The once eager energy shifts into silence. There is no fight, no clear reason, just absence. And in that absence, your heart aches, wondering what you did wrong. But here is the truth: you did nothing. The bond did not break. It became too deep, and in touching that depth, it awakened his oldest fears. This is what Jung would call the activation of the shadow, the surfacing of everything he has repressed. Abandonment, betrayal, rejection, the unworthiness he never healed. True love does not just illuminate the beautiful, it unearths the wounded. It opens sealed doors, awakens forgotten memories, and forces him to feel what he has spent a lifetime burying. And for a man unprepared, this is terrifying. He runs not because he no longer cares, but because he feels more than he knows how to hold. This is emotional flight, a reflex born from a history where love was associated with pain. For him, intimacy does not always feel safe, it feels like danger, and so he withdraws, not because his heart wants to leave, but because his wound cries out for protection. When he withdraws, it is tempting to take it personally. You may replay every word, every glance, every moment, wondering where you went wrong. But the truth is, his distance is rarely about you. It is about the storm inside him, the collision between the love he feels and the fear it awakens. Jung described this as the shadow rising, those hidden fears, insecurities, and wounds that live in the unconscious, waiting for love to stir them awake. For some men, love does not represent safety, it represents risk. It means lowering defenses, dismantling armor, and exposing the most fragile parts of themselves. And if his history has been shaped by abandonment, betrayal, or rejection, then closeness does not feel like comfort, it feels like danger. So when he begins to truly fall in love, his first instinct may not be to hold you tighter, but to run, not because he does not want you, but because he does not yet know how to hold the very love he craves. This is the painful paradox of emotional flight. The deeper he feels, the more he withdraws. His silence is not proof of indifference, it is evidence of how deeply you touch him. His avoidance is not rejection, it is his unconscious way of trying to protect a heart that feels too exposed. And though it may wound you, understanding this dynamic can free you from the trap of self-blame, because it is not your fault that his soul trembles at the weight of love. But what should you do when he pulls away? The answer is not to chase him, it is not to beg, demand, or manipulate him into closeness. Because love born of fear cannot be forced, it must be chosen. Your role is not to carry his healing, nor to shrink yourself to fit into his comfort zone. Your greatest act of love, for him and for yourself, is to remain grounded in your own center. Offer presence, but not pursuit. Hold space, but not at the cost of your own clarity. For love that requires you to abandon yourself is not love, it is sacrifice, and sacrifice only feeds the wound, not the soul. Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain," and often that awakening begins with fear. When he retreats, it may be the clearest sign that what he feels for you runs deeper than he can yet admit, because the truth is, you do not scare him, you awaken him, and awakening always unsettles before it transforms. If he has the courage to face his shadow, something shifts. Slowly, subtly, almost imperceptibly, the resistance begins to crack. The inner war between fear and desire softens. The armor he clung to starts to feel heavier than the vulnerability he avoided, and then, sometimes in the quietest of ways, surrender happens. This surrender does not always look like grand confessions or poetic promises. Sometimes it is simply this: he stays, he stops running, he no longer hides behind excuses or distances himself with silence. He chooses you, not with fantasy, but with presence. And in that choice lies something infinitely more powerful than words. Because when a man who has fought love finally stops resisting, it is not weakness, it is strength. It is the strength of someone who has stopped waging war against his own heart. He may still tremble, his words may still stumble, but his energy has changed. He is no longer the man who runs, he is the man who stays, even while afraid. From the perspective of depth psychology, this moment is monumental. It is the integration of the shadow, the acceptance of feelings once denied, the recognition that love is not an enemy but a path to wholeness. For the first time, he can admit to himself that vulnerability does not destroy him, it frees him. He may say something simple, almost unpolished. "I can't promise perfection, but I want to try with you." Or, "With you, I feel at home, even when I'm scared." These are not lines meant to impress. They are the truths of a man who has stopped running from himself. Yet, not every man reaches this stage. Many remain trapped in avoidance, lost in self-deception, enslaved by fear. To stay requires courage. To surrender requires maturity. Only those who dare to look inward, to face their wounds instead of projecting them, can step across the threshold into authentic love. And when they do, everything changes. He no longer minimizes his affection. He no longer makes you question your worth, because now love is not a threat. It has become an undeniable truth. And you, the one who saw through his contradictions, who had the strength not to be blinded by every silence, now face your own choice. Do you embrace this love that has matured through fear and shadow, or do you continue your own path, carrying with you the clarity you gained while he lingered in confusion? What matters most is that the choice is yours. For if a man finally surrenders to love, he does so not from weakness, but from strength, the strength born of no longer denying himself. And true love, in its essence, is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to stay, to open, to risk, even when fear still lingers. That decision, human and imperfect as it is, may be the greatest proof of love you will ever receive. But make no mistake, when the man who once ran finally chooses to stay, it does not mean the journey becomes easy. In fact, it marks the beginning of a new chapter, one as challenging as it is beautiful. The chapter of rebuilding, because love that has passed through shadow carries scars, memories, and fragility. It is not a love that pretends everything is perfect. It is a love that acknowledges pain, yet chooses presence anyway. When a man stops running and begins to stay, it is not the end of the story, it is the beginning of a deeper one. Because staying is not just about physical presence, it is about emotional commitment. It is about showing up, day after day, even when fear still whispers, even when the wounds of the past still ache. And this stage, though quieter than the turbulence before, is where true intimacy is born. Now, his care is no longer just an instinctive reaction, it becomes a choice. He does not simply check if you got home safely, he makes sure you feel safe in his presence. He does not only reach out when you are in pain, he learns how to stand beside you in joy and in sorrow, without retreating. His love is not measured by intensity that burns and fades, but by consistency that sustains and strengthens. This is the shift from passion fueled by fear to intimacy built on awareness. And you too feel the difference. The confusion that once haunted you begins to fade. No longer are you left guessing whether his affection is real, because his actions align with his words. No longer do you have to read between silences, because even when quiet, his presence is steady. You sense that the energy which was once erratic, now hot, now cold, has settled into something grounded, something reliable. The games of withdrawal and return lose their grip because he has chosen not to play them anymore. Yet do not mistake this steadiness for dullness. True love is not the absence of intensity, it is intensity that has found its home. It is passion that has matured into tenderness. It is desire that is no longer frantic, but deep, patient, enduring. This is the stage where you can finally exhale, not because everything is perfect, but because it is real. And in this space of honesty, even insecurities find their place. They are no longer hidden or denied, but expressed without shame. Vulnerability ceases to be a threat and becomes a bridge. You no longer need to prove yourselves to each other, because both of you understand that love is not about who wins, but about who is willing to remain open. Silence is no longer used as punishment, it becomes a space for understanding. Conflict is no longer a battlefield, it becomes an opportunity to grow together. Jung wrote that, "What we deny submits us, what we accept transforms us." And this is the ultimate transformation of love. When a man accepts his fear instead of running from it, when a woman accepts her strength instead of silencing it, both are transformed. Love ceases to be a game of masks and becomes a mirror of truth. In that mirror, you see not perfection, but wholeness. You see a love that is not built on illusion, but on presence. Perhaps the greatest beauty of this journey is that both of you emerge more authentic. You have seen his shadows, his contradictions, his fear, and he has witnessed your patience, your clarity, your courage not to abandon yourself. Together, you discover that love is not about rescuing one another, but about standing side by side, each carrying your own soul, yet choosing to walk together. And if you are the woman listening now, let this be your reminder. Your strength lies not in waiting endlessly for someone to choose you, but in choosing yourself, even while loving. Your power lies not in fixing him, but in holding your truth so firmly that he must rise to meet it if he wishes to stay. Love is not about diminishing yourself to soothe another's fear. It is about growing so fully into yourself that your very presence awakens truth in him. And if you are the man listening, hear this. Your vulnerability is not weakness. It is the doorway to your most authentic self. The armor you have carried may have protected you once, but it also kept you from what you long for most: connection. To love is not to be fearless. To love is to feel the fear and still choose to open your heart. That act, fragile and brave, is the essence of strength, because true love does not arrive to complete us. It arrives to reveal us. It is not meant to make us perfect, but to make us real. It does not silence our fears, but teaches us how to live with them without letting them rule us. It is not about controlling or possessing another. It is about becoming more fully ourselves in the presence of someone who dares to do the same. And when two souls meet in that space, when the running stops, when the hiding ends, love ceases to be a battlefield. It becomes a sanctuary, a place where your scars are not shameful, but sacred. A place where silence does not wound, but heals. A place where fear is not denied, but held gently until it transforms. That is the love worth waiting for. That is the love worth choosing. So, if you find yourself in the midst of contradiction, if he pulls away just when he seems closest, if he denies with words what his actions confess, remember this: it is not always a sign of indifference. Sometimes it is proof of how deeply you matter. And if he one day finds the courage to stop running, to integrate his shadow, and to stand before you without armor, then you will know. Not because he says it, but because he stays. Love, in the end, is not measured by declarations, but by presence, by the quiet decision to return, again and again, to the one who awakens both your fear and your truth. That is where unconscious love transforms into conscious choice. That is where shadow turns into light. And that, more than any words, is the proof of a love that is real. So if these words touched something in you, let it be more than just a moment of listening. Let it be a reminder that love is not about chasing or begging to be chosen. It's about awakening within yourself and within another. And if this message stirred your soul, if it made you see love with new eyes, then don't keep it to yourself. Share it, carry it, and let it ripple outward. And before you go, remember this space. Heartsync X exists to remind you of the truths you already carry within. If you felt something awaken here, I invite you to stay connected. Subscribe, join this journey, and let's keep exploring together the mysteries of love, the courage of vulnerability, and the beauty of becoming real. Because your heart deserves nothing less than a love that is honest, deep, and unafraid.